Kia ora, ko Smith aho. Nā mai ki te whare, welcome to the House. This week at Parliament is Estimates Scrutiny Week, when ministers face select committees to defend their budget plans. Today we talk with a star scrutiny performer from last time round. He's one of a number of MPs with a PhD, and so with the brutal research experience that might just be useful for digging into something as labyrinthine and esoteric as the budget.
Kia ora. My name is Xu-Nan. I'm one of the Green Party MPs. So one of the major roles of being an MP as part of the legislature is to scrutinize the executive on how they make law, being one part of it, and the other part is their budget and how they're going to spend that budget. So that is what we're going to be seeing this week as one of two scrutiny weeks. We'll have hearings with both the minister and the ministry or agency on how they are going to spend the money that they set out in the budget.
You will have been prepping for this to some extent since the budget. What do you do?
When we're looking at preparation, I like to take a very methodological approach. The first thing I always look at a summary of initiatives. So within that, what's new? What has the government introduced that's new? What has the government taken away? That's formed the basis of a number of my questions. Then you go to the actual vote. So, within my portfolio, let's say the two biggest ones are vote education and vote justice. Getting into the really minutiae and going through it line by line, looking at how the budget is being put together, what money is being spent, what money hasn't been spent. And so I've normally put together a massive spreadsheet of all of the different questions. I then prioritize it. And based on the questions I would like to ask, put it into different themes. And anything I don't get to ask is put aside as post-hearing questions.
I think it would have been last year's budget. You were asking questions in the line of, now, if you look at page 742, you will see on line 17, blah, blah, blah. At times, you seem to be more aware of what was in the budget than the minister you were questioning. You obviously take this very seriously.
Yeah, I think on one hand, I take my role as an MP and as a member of the legislature extremely seriously, particularly around how we hold that checks and balances against the executive. And I think, opposition MPs have a particularly important role for that. Because of my research background, I'm particularly aware that I need to be able to justify the questions I ask and be able to find very quickly where that source is from. So I have it with me all the time.
Right. How many questions do you get to ask?
To be fair, in most cases, when it comes to select committee, let's say education and workforce, for example, regardless of which political party you're from, most people are pretty collegial when it comes to asking questions. And the chair is usually pretty good. So often oppositions do get a little bit more time. But I think, if we're looking at maybe roughly 15 minutes or 20 minutes for a long sustained line of primary questions, within an hour, you might be able to get 4 or 5 main questions, but everyone has the ability to sub off each other's questions.
Do you coordinate a little bit between the different parties so that you're not doubling up?
It's MP dependent and it's portfolio dependent. Being able to support each other and being bounced off each other is also another really good way of scrutinizing the executive, because I think at its core, the intention here is to hold the executive account on their budget. It's less about a gotcha moment and more about everyone and the legislature in general working together to scrutinize.
You were talking about pre-questions, the actual committee hearing itself, and then there's an aftermath.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those three.
We can put in some pre-hearing questions, and those are a fairly standard list of questions that people may submit.
And they come from the committee itself to the minister?
They come from the committee itself to the ministry. So the really important thing about Scrutiny Week, both in terms of the one this week, but also the one in December, is it's one of the few opportunities that we have to be able to not only ask ministers questions, which we can do normally through written questions, but be able to ask ministry questions. After the pre-hearing questions, when the budget is launched, we're then also able to put in some post-budget questions. And these are the questions on the basis of what is in the budget, and they will be available before the hearing. So that way, if anyone want to prepare more detailed questions based on those responses, they could. The hearing itself is kind of like your oral questions, and that's when we get to ask some very specific questions, but also, I guess, in some ways, the more spicy questions. And after the hearing, depending on whether you have any questions you weren't able to ask, or if new information came about as a result of the public hearing with the minister or with the ministry or the agency, you can put together post-hearing questions. And that can be fairly substantial. And it also allows the ministry time to digest your question and be able to give you a more fulsome answer.
And sometimes there's things you might ask in the committee that no one can actually answer on the spot. So you give them a chance to go away and come back to you.
Exactly. Although I spend a great deal of time and care in putting together my questions and being able to go through the vote and the summary of initiatives line by line, but I also kind of acknowledge and recognize the fact that not everyone will know every line off by heart, and it's just not feasible. And sometimes you do need to come back with some of those answers. And we do see that happen quite often during hearings.
That was Green MP Lawrence Xu-Nan on Estimates Scrutiny Week. You've been listening to The House. E te whakaronga koe ki te whare. This program is produced with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mā te wā.